Welcome to Talking Tech with Legal IT Insider. I'm your host, Caroline Hill, and today we're going to be taking a look at a product demonstration from Draftable. So Draftable Legal was launched in 2023 in response to demand from the legal market for more choice in document comparison solutions. Draftable had provided doc comparison for about 13 years, but it wasn't legally tailored. And over the last couple of years, we've seen the evolution of the Draftable product stack for law firms. Here with me, as you'll see, to demo some of the latest functionality is Caspar Roxburgh, who is product lead at Draftable. And Caspar, you've had a really interesting and varied career in AI and data analytics, and you've been with Draftable since 2022.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's been quite an exciting journey to be able to make this pivot into the legal space, and we've been just loving the experience of solving problems for lawyers.
Well, it's great to have you on. So today, Caspar's going to be demoing two new features. We're going to have it all very punchy and interspersed. We're going to be talking about two features released in the last 6 months, as well as for anybody who's not familiar with Draftable, some of the core functionality, just to make sure that you're all up to speed. Yep. And I'm going to be asking questions and interrupting as we go, so I'll be the annoying one. Though I may save some of the questions for the end, so I don't interrupt you too much. So over to you, Caspar. So perhaps give a little bit of an outline about Draftable, for anyone who's not familiar, and then please dive into the new features.
Sure, absolutely. So thanks so much for that introduction, Caroline. And please do feel free to just go nuts and interrupt anytime you need to. So for anyone that's just seeing this for the first time, what you've got on screen right now is Draftable Legal, what we call Draftable Legal. This is our legal specific document comparison tool. You've heard a bit about the background of Draftable from Caroline there. So we built this in response to the needs of the legal community specifically. And I'm not going to go through every single feature, but I'll just start by saying it's a desktop application, so everything gets processed on the machine locally. You don't share any documents with Draftable. We are building a browser-based web app, but we can talk about that another time. What you'll notice about the way it looks and the way it feels is that it's got a little bit of resemblance with a modern web application, and specifically a web browser. So there's a little tab here for a new comparison, and that's all very deliberate. We want Draftable to be as easy to use for a first-time user as possible to make that migration really simple. So the nice thing about that is there's lots of different ways you can load files, but I'm just going to drop a few in that I've compared recently. I'm just going to run a compare. While that's working, I can start a new tab. I can jump in. That was a Word document I was comparing. I'm now going to load some Excel files. Draftable compares all file types in one application, PDFs, Excels, PowerPoints, you name it, we do it. And as you can see, I've got a little icon there that shows that was a Word document that's now complete. So it's just that easy. Like, that's how I run a compare. It's super simple, integrates with all the major DMSs that you need. Integrates with Outlook, SharePoint, Word, Excel, everything, right? Now, this is a bit of a quick view of what Draftable's comparison viewer looks like. You don't have to use this, of course, but if you do, it's got some nifty features, like you can click on any change, jump to where it is, leave a note, please check. Leave a tag that your administrators can kind of determine what tags are available to your team, so it can be specific to your firm's needs. Got a few other changes. I'll leave some notes there. That's really interesting. And then obviously when you're ready to complete that review, you've done everything you want to do there. You've got the option to save to DMS, save locally, open it as any file type that you possibly need. But what's been really popular recently has been this new feature that we've released, which is the departures table. So effectively, if you're able to do a review as a comparison user, that's handy, right? You've got this detail that you need to see. You've been able to do things in Draftable, like leave a comment, leave a note, start to compile your responses to the changes that you've received. But when you go to the point of sharing those changes with a colleague, with a partner, or even indeed with your clients, a full Redline can be quite a lot to take in, especially when it's hundreds of pages long. So this was directly built in response to a request from one of our customers, Alan's, based in Australia who had a team, a practice area that were building what they call a departures table. It's also known as an issues list in some firms. And it's basically a summary of all the changes that have been made in a nice, neat table with references to the clauses. And you can see the change in the context of the clause itself. And so I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll show you how quickly it gets generated, because this is...
If we just quickly, so in terms of accessibility, obviously, so in terms of, this is not obviously one of the issues, is another plugin, another thing to have a look at. Just before you flick to, perhaps I should have jumped on now, Caspar. But so how do you make sure that it's not just another thing that people are looking at in terms of the integration perspective before we flip over to the other view?
Are you talking about Draftable itself, or
no, yes,
the output?
In terms of accessing the functionality of this what we're looking at right now,
right?
Before we flip email, how are we making sure that they're not having to, it's just another thing to look at, another thing to plug in?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, the primary thing about Draftable is that it's used on your computer as a separate application. You can start your comparison from Microsoft Office, where you're normally working. So Outlook, as an example, makes it quite easy for you to just load files and run a compare. And we do have features that allow you to pre-program your most preferred outputs and then just have those be generated without ever really looking at the Draftable user interface itself. So if you prefer not to context switch, you don't really have to use what you're seeing on screen right now. You can just generate the output straight into Microsoft Word, for example. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. By me, sorry, I interrupted. So yeah, and then if you flip to Outlook.
Yeah, sure. Well, just before I do, I'll just quickly show you what the departures table output looks like. So it's just available as an output here. You can also just run the compare to generate it straight off the bat, if that's your preference. You have the option to filter the changes that are in the list as well before you generate it. But I'll just hit that. And basically, that was a previous one that I'd already generated, but here's the actual one that's just generated live in front of you. This is what it looks like. So as you can see, it's just a Word document. You can actually change the template to be in your firm's style, of course, which we know is going to be really important. But basically, anything that comes before numbered clauses is labeled as preamble. But what you see is the change. For example, this test text has been introduced as an insertion into the definitions section into this clause. It's very easy for somebody who's not looking at the red line to see the change in the context and understand which part of the document has been impacted. And that's what makes it so powerful, as an easy thing to review instead of just having to go through all the red lines that you've got. And the cool thing is that you can leave those notes and tags that I was showing you before, and they'll actually be pulled out, as well as structured notes that are in square brackets. And you can also see this comment here. So this is actually from the input file itself. So somebody's dropped a comment on a change in the files that we compared in Word, and that's actually been pulled in alongside it. So you get that full context that you need to review the significance of the change.
This is hours, right? This is one of these things that it just, when we have a lot of conversations around ROI, and it's sometimes quite difficult with bits of tech to whatever it might be to prove ROI. This is one of these things. I think it's pretty easy to show. This takes an associate hours.
Oh yeah. So the reason, again, I bring up that relationship with Alan's, because the reason why we built this, it very much in the tradition of Draftable and why we're in the legal industry in the first place, was we were presented with this problem that their associates were taking the outputs, the red lines that Draftable was generating, and then spending 5 hours compiling this exact document. And you can see how long it took me there right there. Like, this is a real demo. I'm not showing you something that was prepared earlier. It takes a few seconds. And what we're hearing from firms is that they see this and they say, this is the output we actually need. Not all the time. Somebody needs to look at a red line, but most people probably don't. And so getting to the answer faster, that's the sort of thing that we're interested in doing for the community.
100%.
So that was the departures table. It's pretty nifty. You can also share it in an email. There's all sorts of great ways that you can leverage it. And just to make the point, you can, as I said, you can just get it right there at the start of the process. There's a departures table option right here, and it just opens directly into Word. So again, not forcing people into Draftable. But the other thing you mentioned at the top that I'm going to be showing today is probably the feature that's had the biggest impact, I think, based on just the reaction from customers, the reaction from people we speak to at trade shows and things like that, which is what we call Redline and email. So what you're seeing on screen is an email somebody has sent me, and this might be familiar to people in your audience. I've got an email, somebody has said, see changes below, and I've got some marked up changes that have been left in Outlook. And kindly, somebody has been very decent. They've actually gone to the effort to manually mark this all up, because there's no redlining in Outlook. There's no track changes in Outlook. There's no accept reject changes in Outlook. And we know, again, speaking with our relationship with Allen's, but also with other firms were coming to us and saying, we need something in Outlook, because we're doing back and forth internally, sometimes with clients, on a particular change, and we have no way of tracking this, so it's all done manually. And as a comparison solution, this is an obvious place for us to be trying to solve that problem and trying to also bring some innovation into the comparison space. So it's great when somebody sends this to you, but maybe you've also received an email like this, which is see changes below, and there's actually nothing marked up there. So somebody's gone to the effort to change my original draft on these licensing terms, but they haven't actually indicated what's changed. So normally I'd have to go through that manually. It's going to be quite a difficult process, error prone as well, which we don't want. So what we've done with Draftable, it's built into our modern Outlook add-in, is what we call Redline and email. You open it up, you get a little menu here on the side. And in the case of having an email that you want to compare against an earlier one in the conversation, you just hit that command at the top, compare against earlier email. It will automatically compare it against the most recent reply in that email chain, but because that was a forward, I can easily just change the baseline. Let's start with the first one in the conversation, select that email, and you can see immediately there's a little comparison right here in Outlook that just shows you immediately all of the changes since the first email was sent in that conversation, which is great. That's obviously very exciting, and you can see it's got Draftable's legal specific algorithm. You're getting things you don't get in Microsoft Compare, like edits within a move, and that granularity of those changes. But what you really want to be able to do is then complete the workflow. So we've also built the accept reject functionality right here in Outlook. So I can reject this initial changes because that's just some formatting between the emails, get rid of that one, but then I can accept the rest very quickly. I jump through those, all done. And then when I'm finished, I can either copy that new email that I've just gone through and drop it into an existing conversation I've got, or I can go ahead and create an entirely new email, and bang, I'm ready to hit send, and off we go. So
how common is it? That's super interesting. I can see the value, but how common is it that people are, and I'm an ex-lawyer, I suppose I should know, but it was a really long time ago. How often is it that people are using Outlook and using email and doing this kind of, it feels like it's quite risky. I think that I can see the need for this. It's kind of surprising to me a little bit that people are making these kind of changes in email, but perhaps that's just me being naive.
Well, what I'd say to you is this is probably a more common workflow scenario than just specifically in the legal industry. So anytime you're trying to fine tune a particular change, or with colleagues, particularly think of a legal team that's in-house, right, where you're having to get input from subject matter experts and other functions. So they're not going to have necessarily even use something like iManage or NetDocuments with its dedicated version control systems. So what you end up getting typically is, if it's in Word, you can track changes, but if it's not, you get this kind of manual flow. But even speaking with CIOs at major firms across the globe, when we show this tool to them and show them what we do, the response is generally either I've been looking for something like this, or I need this right now, and I don't just need it for the people that use comparison, I need it for everyone, because it's actually a really common workflow. And at the moment, it's just like the Wild West. It's like pre-compare for document drafting. So it has a variety of instances you use it. You might even use it just to illustrate to a more junior employee the changes you've made from a more of a training kind of perspective. But yeah, I speak to people that say, yeah, I'm spending hours marking up my emails this manual way that you've started with at the beginning of the demo.
Yeah, and then with this, so then they would, I mean, I guess the agreement is another thing altogether, but obviously eventually this will end up needing to be going, they'll need to mark up the agreement, which they'll then have to do manually. So they'll be able to compare, and it's super quick, super efficient. You compare it to you can compare not just the last email, but obviously you can select the appropriate one. And I mean, that was obviously super quick. And then once they've sort of got to the end of the chain, then they're going to have to obviously sort of mark up that in the agreement itself.
Yeah, get that back in. So obviously there's just a standard copy paste flow that you can take into the document you're working on. You can select text. I mean, the old way that you would have done this, right, is you'd receive an email, you'd select the text, and then you'd right click the text and say something like compare with Draftable, or you'd use an add-in and there's compare text functionality. But it's actually just loading the text into your compare tool and then turning it into a Redline document. But that's, again, it's to bring it back because you're trying to have a discussion with somebody over email about whether you should change something and how you should change it. And, it's just reflecting a realistic back and forth that takes place. Ultimately, document drafting is always going to take place in Microsoft Word, right? That is ultimately where people do the work. And so, in the end, you're going to take this text into Word.
Yeah. And this is something that Alan's was asking you for. I mean, and
specifically.
You've sort of, this is one of, perhaps, I don't know if USP is the right way, but obviously you've sort of modeled yourself on making sure that you're communicating with clients and you're responding to what they need. And so I suppose that's a really good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, our origin story in legal, it comes from responding to the needs of the market. And so we've kind of taken that through as a philosophy that we're customer led. We have a very transparent roadmap. We make that public. We hold ourselves accountable to it. We're very kind of open about how we plan and what we do, and our customers seem to love it. So it's just an operating principle, really.
I think this. So just across the board of both of the things, and perhaps the space that you're in the time that we've got. So I feel like this is one of those areas where people go, oh, that is Gen AI is going to take over comparison. Like maybe the stuff that you're showing is not just straightforward comparison. But what do you say? Like, so people go, oh, you'll be able to use, I hear this all the time. You'll be able to use mainstream cloud providers for this. What's your sort of to them?
Oh, look, I talk about this a lot with pretty much everyone. I mean, basically, even people that don't know anything about comparison ask me how AI is going to impact my work. So you have to start from the premise of, why do people buy comparison software in the first place? Like, what problem does it actually solve for the firm? And that problem is you don't want to miss any change. And historically, when this was being done by humans manually, changes were missed. And even a small change can have a substantial impact, as we all know, right? So you pay for an advanced tool like Draftable, even over something that you get out of the box like Word Compare, because you need something that is going to definitely catch every change. It's going to work exactly as you need to, and specifically to the degree that the legal industry requires. Now, with something like AI, it's not rules-based and deterministic. It's a probabilistic model, which means that it will, not behave in the same way and make the same prediction every single time. Now, it might become 99% accurate at detecting changes, but that means that 1 in every 100 compares might have something missed. And do we really think that that's something that, an industry like the legal industry can actually tolerate? Now, there's plenty of applications for AI in the legal industry that make a ton of sense. But the way that we see Draftable Legal, like a compare tool, is exactly that. It's a tool, right? So just like with ChatGPT, you can call a web search, right? That's a tool that the AI can use. But that tool is actually a rules-based software program. And it's the same with legal. So we think that, whether it's a human lawyer that's running a compare, or even today and in the future, it's actually an AI agent running a compare, there's still going to be a need for a rules-based compare tool. And that's what Draftable does. And that's kind of the business that we're we're in. So there's some great stuff happening with Gen AI. I'm excited about it. I love keeping up with it. It's thrilling. But yeah, we're looking to see how, and we're kind of actively kind of exploring how Draftable can fit into the future agentic AI workflow in legal.
Yeah, and also that your relationship with firms and your understanding of legal and almost like, I want to say, the services side of the business is super important, in terms of being really responsive. I know law firms really value that. There's such an interesting time now in sort of maturing of legal tech, and what that looks like in terms of how much relationship there is, if but I feel like there will continue to be an edge or a need for a company that focuses very much on responding to their needs. How do you, as you sort of grow, how do you build that in? Is there a way to build that in and make sure that you don't lose that? Is there a way to kind of like turn services and relationship into a process, or to make sure you don't lose that?
Look, I think it's a great question. It kind of comes down to this concept of like, what makes your brand unique? How do you play? How do you win? That sort of thing, right? So for Draftable, we're very much wearing the customer heart on our sleeve, as I've been saying in this conversation. And so, I think for us, the intention is to maintain the customer focus and the love, and really, build software that lawyers love to use, because it's easy, because it's simple, because it feels good, and because when they have support needs, they're met very quickly, and they're met with a lot of empathy and understanding. When they have requests or improvements, those are considered respectfully. They're put in, we communicate openly and honestly. It's just, honestly, it sounds like a really basic thing to say, but it works. The reality is our customers really appreciate the way that we're operating. So I see it as a necessary a defining ingredient of Draftable. In terms of how you maintain that as you scale, there are so many elements to it. Part of it's process, part of it's having enough people, but also we have AI now, right? And that actually impacts how you build software as well. So for us, we're not building AI products per se. We'll use AI where it makes sense in Draftable products. But what we are absolutely doing is making it easier for us to build, maintain, and a great product with AI. So, and that translates ultimately into our price point. We're very strong believers in fair and competitive pricing, and we deliberately price our product well below our competitors, and that's meant to reflect the reality of what it costs to build something in this day and age, when you do have AI to help you do it.
Yeah, I wish you the best of luck. I know that this lawyers appreciate tech that works well and that meets them at their point of need, and that's accurate. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but like, I think there's a nervousness. I do think these are huge times of change. It's super exciting, but having something that does what it says it's going to do, and it's easy to use, and it does it quickly, and it does it accurately. There's it goes without saying that that's super valued. So I wish you the best of luck with it, and I look forward to hearing the next instalment as in your growth journey.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Really appreciate your time, and thank you to everyone for watching.
Yeah, nice speaking to you.